Welcome to the Americus Podcast. My name is John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Chris Hawkins. Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, great. Well, Chris is a firefighter EMT for the city of Americus, and I've just recently got to know you a little bit through a phone call, through just going through the form, and also just sitting with you a little bit beforehand. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. So Chris, it says on your form that you were actually born and raised in Americus. So do you mind just kind of sharing a little bit what it's like to grow up in Americus, Georgia?
Okay, yeah, so I was born, raised here, been here all my life. Both my parents work for the school system, so my mom is a retired teacher and my dad was actually a maintenance man for all the schools. So growing through the schools, I really could not get away with a lot. I mean, I was not a bad kid to begin with, but if I did something that was out of line, somebody would say, oh, okay, I'm gonna go talk to your mom, or do I need to call your dad? So that was always in the back of my mind, you know, let me do the things that I need to do so I don't get in trouble. But been here all my life, went through the primary school, elementary school, middle school, graduated from Americus in 2010. I actually remember I was the first second grade class to go through the primary school because I remember they finished building it and then they moved us into it. But I remember that year because my mom taught second grade and she would not let me be in a class even though I wanted to be, because I knew, you know, she would push me and challenge me, but I still got that regardless either way. But yeah, so been here all my life.
That's awesome. So you have siblings?
I do. I have two younger brothers that were at home with me. I have 3 older brothers and 2 older sisters.
Okay. So what was it like just growing up in the household of the Hawkins? What was kind of the daily feel and just the dynamics there? So
with both my parents working for the school system, we all got it at just about the same time. My mom working at the school that she did, up until I started high school, we would ride with her because she was at the primary school. We get dropped off there and then we just walk to whatever school we were going to. Now when I started high school, then I started to ride with my dad because that gave me a little bit more time to kind of sleep in and have a little bit of a slower routine. I didn't have to worry about being at the school so early. But I mean, I know I said I had the older siblings, but mainly it was me and my 2 younger brothers growing up. So I had 2 younger brothers, which made 3 boys in the house. So we were rowdy. We were always wanting to be outside playing games. We played a lot of sports, but it was also my parents struggled trying to feed 3 growing boys. Not so much like monetary wise, but like it was just that point where 3 growing boys eat a lot. So we always had to get groceries and made sure we had snacks and everything stocked. But I had a good childhood, man. I mean, my parents are great. Didn't have any issues with my brothers. We had fun growing up, you know. We had neighbors that we would go and play with, do different things with them. We just always been real close.
Yeah. Do you still live around the area that you were born, like in Americus, or like where were you? So, where was your family at?
Initially, my parents lived off the Highway 280, like going toward Plains. And I remember in 5th grade, we ended up moving to where they live now, which is Albany Annex. So grew up outside of the city limits, so we could kind of do our own thing out there, you know, not have to worry about being in other people's yards. We could ride our bike where we wanted to go. We could walk in the woods, kind of do those things. Currently now, I live within the city limits, and it's different. Don't have a yard that is big enough for what I would like my kids to be able to play in. Traffic is always kind of heavy, so I'm worried about that. But we do have a backyard. My son loves to play disc golf, so I put his chains in the backyard and we'll just go back there and we'll throw. We're getting to the point now where I can put his basket in the front yard and I'll say, okay, now if you throw into the road, you stay in the yard and you let me go get it. Which he does a good job with that.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your interest, Chris, growing up, 5, 10 years old, 15, what are you interested in? What do you love to do? Who's influencing you at this time?
I always have enjoyed being outdoors, hunting and fishing. My dad, he was more on the fishing side, so like I remember going fishing even at the age of like 3. Like he would put me on his back, we'd go out there to the pond. That actually is a funny story. So the first fish that I actually caught, it was a largemouth bass, and it was a pretty decent size one. So my dad helped me cast out. I threw it out there in the water and everything and reeling it in, and I remember this fish actually like hitting my line. And man, me being so young, it scared me. So as soon as he hit that lure, like I felt it, I let it go. And the rod went into the water. The fish is like still going with the rod. And I remember my dad having to go out there, grabbing the rod and bringing it back in. And we actually reeled that fish in. That's a story that he always tells people. But I always have been outside. And I remember there was a point in one of my Boy Scout meetings where like they were teaching us how to do these things, like, that involve like fishing and like just being able to take care of yourself outside. And so one of the skills was like actually casting a rod. And I felt like a pro at it because I could do it and like these other kids could not. And man, they were looking at me like I was a celebrity. And it felt good because I was like, okay, my dad taught me how to do that. Like I'm making my dad proud in a way. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. It's good. So you get into Boy Scouts. When does that take place? I mean, obviously your parents see that that's a value to put you into the Scouts. Did you see the same value just by being a part of a team and being a part of that kind of culture growing up?
I agree. So initially you start out as Cub Scouts and you start out as a Tiger and then you work your way up. And actually when you hit middle school is when you kind of transition into Boy Scouts from Cub Scouts. So you get your wee below and then you become a Boy Scout, and after that you're earning like the different badges. So it's like Star, Life, get Heart, and then eventually you get to your Eagle. But it was a team concept there. We did a lot of things as a group, and I feel like that emphasized kind of working together, not so much just the individual. Like you always hear this idea of you're only as strong as the weakest person in your group. And that can have a negative connotation to it sometimes, but it should push us in a way to where, okay, if this guy is struggling and I know how to do something, then how bad would it be that I don't help them to gain that knowledge, or like I don't share that knowledge with them to better them, because we're only as good as, the weakest link, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So where did that come from? I mean, just that idea, that thought, that's a value system that you have in you that says, wait a minute. Because some people would say, this is the weakest link, so we just let them drown, right? But there's something in you that says, even at that age, no, we need to help this guy out. We need to bring him up. Where does that come from?
I think that idea, concept comes from my dad, because I learned a lot from my dad, and I feel like my dad sometimes did not think that I learned a lot from him, but I was always watching him, and I saw like how he interacted with the people around him. If somebody was struggling and my dad knew how to help them, or even if he didn't know how to help them, he was gonna help him because that's just who he is. Like he wasn't gonna sit there and watch somebody struggle or somebody be in need. So I feel like I took that from him.
That's huge. Who else was some kind of influences in your life kind of growing up that have kind of helped shape and mold who you are today?
Well, both my parents, actually my mom has a really big heart, and I think that's where the caring side comes from me. Like I don't like to see people struggle, and I feel like I have an obligation, just to help people. So I guess in a way I could say that came from both of my parents. But even growing up, like through scouts, like a guy named Mr. Joseph Jones, who actually my scoutmaster through Boy Scouts up until the time that he passed. He had a pretty big influence on me. I think he saw something in me that I couldn't see at the time, and he did his best to bring it out into like the positions that he put me in scouts, positions that were not comfortable, but like they were necessary for me to grow as a person. So
that's huge. How important is it for parents with their kids or scoutmaster to recognize the impact that they can make on people just by paying attention, just by watching people. You're watching them, they're modeling something. How important is it, do you think, just in our day and age, to make sure that we're modeling even if we don't think people are paying attention?
Well, I would say people are watching you regardless if you think they are or not. And you're going to leave behind a legacy. And even if you never meet these people, there are going to be people that saw something that you did that's always going to stick with them as to how they approached a situation or how they acted, in certain moments. And so I think it's just important because, for one, you never know who's watching you, but you never know how your actions are going to affect somebody that you'll never meet, So, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where, like, I guess just make the most of the opportunities that you have. And you have to realize that if you're complacent, you're not growing. But, like, it's not necessarily about you growing. If you see people that are kind of stuck in a rut and they need that push, then I would say don't be afraid to step in and try and, push them along, because I believe that's what we're called to do as believers. It's not so much I'm individually running the race by myself. We should be running the race together and helping spur along those who are running beside us, even though they might not be at the same pace as us. If I catch up with somebody and I see them slowing down, then I should be like, okay, let's keep this going, let's move together. So I think it's looking at it from that spiritual side, it relates back to just, how we interact with each other on a daily basis. Either you're helping push somebody along or you're holding them back, or you're just choosing not to do anything. Yeah. And how bad is that if we see somebody that we feel like we could help and we just like my thoughts are like, my image is more important than what this person is dealing with or what they may be going through. So,
yeah. It's I would agree. I mean, that's there's so many ways we can impact people with our life, and whether we engage or not, it's telling a story, right? And it's helping people to kind of shape, what does it look like to engage with community? What does it mean to engage with people? And so I'm glad that you had relationships like that encouraged you, that saw something in you, pushed you further than you were probably even willing to go at that time, and see how it ultimately has impacted not just you as a kid, but you as a husband, as a dad, as a firefighter. All of these things, they matter over a long period of time. So let me ask you this: what were some other influences in your life? We talked a little bit on the phone about your love for music. So where did that come from? When did that start?
So my dad is actually a great musician. He's self-taught. He plays guitar, but he'd been playing ever since he was a kid. And so I remember growing up, he would be in the living room with his amp and he'd be playing, and like me and my brothers, we would be right there dancing. But like as we got older, we realized like he was doing this because he actually played in a gospel group. So I remember as we got older going to some of these events where he would play with the band that he was in. They were called the Gospel Keynotes. And so my dad played rhythm electric. I remember they had a bass player, a drummer, and then they had two female singers and one male singer, and so different churches would have them come in and do programs for them, and so I think that's where my love for music came from. I remember getting a drum set when I was really young, like too young to actually know what I was doing with it, and so I ended up destroying it. But my dad played guitar, my mom sang. My mom actually a great singer. So they kind of, I got that from them in a way. They influenced me that way. So
being a drummer myself, I kind of wish I was more interested in something like a guitar, because it's so much easier to travel with. You know, drums, you got to break down, you got to set up, and it's the loudest instrument, and you have to like really process what's going on. Everyone just hears clanking around, and you know, guitar or piano, you know, has all that it just comes with it. It's like, oh, it sounds so good. So what drew you to drums specifically?
I tried guitar actually. Initially, I started with bass because me and some of my buddies were gonna start a band in middle school, and so my dad bought me a bass. I tried that. I went from bass to piano, so I can fool around with both of those. But then I realized like guitar and piano was just not for me. Yeah. So I remember getting a drum set in high school. And even before I got the drum set, we had a music store in Americus downtown. And it was some kind of parade that we played at, because I did band in high school as well. So I remember after that parade, I came to that music store and like he had a drum set in there. And I just went and sat down for hours and
That's
just
awesome.
played. And I know that guy.
What was it? Do you remember what the store was called?
I actually do not. I know somebody in Americus remembers the name of that store, but
that's cool.
I know that guy had to get tired of me just being in there playing, man. I mean, I was in there for hours just playing, and I kind of started to get a rhythm for it, got a feel. It came a little bit natural to me. So then eventually my parents ended up giving me a drum set in high school, and it kind of went from there. I actually remember I went and played at a church, and I was not ready at the time, and I did horrible.
Oh yeah.
And so it kind of set me back for a minute, because I was like, okay, maybe drums is not what I'm called to do. But I got back into it and been playing ever since then.
That's awesome. So gospel music, I mean, contemporary. What were you going for? What was as you were part of bands, like what was influencing you to play?
So I had always had an attraction to just rock music. Like I literally listen to everything. I mean, there's probably a genre out there that you could throw out and I'd be like, yeah, I know this song by this band that's in that genre. So I would say my musical influences are all over the place. But when I was in middle school, it was more so along the rock era. I wouldn't necessarily say we went through an emo phase where we were kind of writing like sad, depressing songs. But we wanted those lyrics that kind of like felt deep and made people really think, okay, is this what they're trying to say, or do they really mean this? And so that was middle school going into high school. And then I actually joined a legitimate rock band when I was in college. We actually played a couple of shows, but it was a little bit more on the heavy side. So I don't necessarily know that people would enjoy that. But that was back when like my hair was wild. I had natural dreads.
So was there a moment you're getting together with the group and you're just like, we need to do this thing, maybe this is like a full-time thing, or was it just fun, just getting a chance to hang out, play music that you loved, or like, you know, what was that like?
So GSW did what they had what they called a University of 1000 class, and I remember meeting a guy in there, and his name is Drew Brownlee, and we just started talking, and he was like, you know, I play guitar, and so it kind of sparked the conversation. I remember going to his dorm room. He had this black Les Paul, and he had an amp, and I mean, he was shredding. and like he is really talented. And then I was just like, okay, well, I play drums, so maybe we should jam sometime. And so we kind of started playing.
It's like music dating. It's like you play guitar, I play drums. What do you think?
Yeah, like let's do something, you know. And so he knew guys that he had went to high school with that played, and so we ended up forming a band called Morning Gloria.
Okay.
Yeah, so we wrote some good songs and never really got like too big, but you know, I think we genuinely had something there. It's just a moment of, you know, avenues kind of working out and things. But you know, it is what it is now.
Yeah.
And I ended up being in a bluegrass band, playing cajon with an acoustic guitar and a lead singer, and actually two of my very good friends. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to music, man.
That's great. That's great. So all right, so you're at GSW. You're playing music. Where's your kind of headspace? Where do you want to go in life? Where do you want to? What are you pursuing? What do you have a major?
So, okay, I'm gonna step back a minute.
Okay.
So, I always have had this desire to serve, and I don't necessarily know where that comes from. More than likely, it comes from the Lord. That's just how He wired me. But I remember growing up, I said I wanted to be a firefighter, and which is actually what I do now. And I remember running into a kid who I graduated with, and we were just talking, and he asked me what I was doing. I told him I'm like, you know, I'm a firefighter now, and he was like, man, I remember back in elementary school, you said you were gonna do that, and you actually did it. So it was cool to hear that, you know, somebody that I grew up with remembered that, and now to see it actually being put into place. But I was all about the military. Like, I just knew that I was gonna do military after high school. Like, I did JROTC, I had been talking to recruiters, took the ASVAB and everything, and then I ended up graduating, and I think I was just afraid to roam, if that makes sense. I was comfortable here, and I let that dictate me not joining the military. And not that I have regrets, because I don't. I think everything that all the decisions that I made have led me to where I'm at now. But so I ended up going to GSW. My first year, I just was taking classes, did not have a major. Somebody found out that I played music that was in the actual music department, so I got recruited to the GSW band.
Okay.
I was in the GSW concert band. I was in the GSW jazz band for a semester.
Okay.
And we had like a GSW brass trio where we would play like, at like this event that they had called the Magical Dinner. So we play like these Baroque style pieces and everything, and they would get dressed up, and it'd be like a feast and all this. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should be a music major.
Yeah.
So music major, here we go. Then I get to the point where I realized GSW's music program is geared more towards teaching, and I didn't want to teach, I just wanted to perform.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that kind of set me back, but I was gonna still stick with it. And the goal at that point was to graduate with a music degree in percussion and then audition for the Navy band. That way I could still serve, but then I still have my hand in music too. And actually, the band director at the time was a guy named Richard Swope. And I actually got the idea from him because he went straight into the Navy band out of high school. And that requires ridiculous amount of talent to go straight in after high school, no kind of degree or anything. And so here I am, a music major, not working out the way that I wanted to. So I end up changing. I go to health and PE. I do that for a while. Then I change to exercise science. Then I'm back at health and PE. And then kind of hit me, okay, maybe college isn't for me. And so I ventured out into the real world and applied with the city of Americus, got hired in 2017, and I've been a firefighter ever since then. So.
Okay. Well, it seems being a part of so many, especially within music, and that's really awesome. I mean, being a part of those types of bands and those types of organizations, like being a part of a school. I mean, you've got to have talent. Like, have you ever met a piece that you're just like, that was the most challenging piece that you've ever had to learn in percussion or drums that you're just like, man, that was just really tough? Or did everything kind of come pretty natural to you?
I don't want to say everything did come kind of natural to me, but I struggle with some things. I can't necessarily remember a piece where I was just like, man, like that was tough. Like, of course I had to work at things and I practiced. Actually, I take that back. Playing in GSW Jazz Band was probably the most difficult time for me as a musician because I was not used to the dynamic of a jazz band. I listen to jazz, but I never really thought about being a jazz drummer. Like I understand the idea that everything is kind of dependent on drums, but in that sense, it was a lot so more because, like, I remember we'd be in practice and the horn section would miss a cue. So the director would stop and he'd be like, okay, he'd look at me and he'd be like, why didn't you give them a lick to cue them in? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they missed the cue. That's on them. That's their part. He like, no, you should have led them into it by like some nice little lick on the snare so they can kind of know, okay, this is where we come in at. And it took me a while to get that, but
kind of like the team dynamic of like, hey, coming in and helping people like progress through the song.
Yeah, it's not
that was the
necessarily
challenging part. Not necessarily the genre was challenging.
Yeah, not
to you.
necessarily the genre. It's just the idea of they're reading their music, you're reading your music, but it's still the collaboration. Like it's a combination, not just individuals. And it sounds so much better when everything is like working together and fluid. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I know I said that was probably the most difficult time for me as a musician, but I grew a ton in that. Like I was practicing a lot because I was like, man, if I don't get this lick right, if I slow down and drag the tempo, like it's all coming back to me as a drummer. Like they're following me, and so I remember I go in the practice room and I just listen to a metronome. Like to just try and get the steadiness of the beat in my head. I actually play drums goofy as well. So where most people use their right hand to play the hi-hat, I don't do that. So I use my left hand.
Okay.
This is my hi-hat hand and this is my snare hand. And so it'll look weird, but that's what works for me. And so because of that, I don't really use my ride cymbal a lot. Like I use a lot of crashes and the hi-hats, and so adjusting to using the ride, like that was kind of difficult because like, it was just weird.
I understand.
You understand.
I understand what you're saying. That's great. That's great. I love. Yeah, I mean, just when you're a drummer, you have just kind of your setup. Depending on how many pieces you have, how many cymbals you have, kind of how you like to sit. You try to sit down. You can't just sit down on somebody's drum set. Like you have to adjust. Most people bring their own snare because they're just like, I got my sound, my tone for that. So it's definitely a culture and an art. You just kind of come into it. So I mean, looking at throughout your life and just recognizing these places that you're in, and you're always wanting to see other people come with you, come alongside of you, even with music. You're helping set the tone, set the pace for it, and wanting to see people succeed. I mean, it seems like your values kind of kept throughout your life. Were there any moments in your life where you felt like your values were challenged or changed?
I would say probably when I got to GSW, I would say that my values were challenged in a way. Growing up, like I said earlier, I was a good kid. I didn't really do a whole lot to get in trouble. I mean, I made mistakes. Everybody does. And there were moments where I did get in trouble. But, like, I did not intentionally seek out opportunities to where I could just kind of push boundaries and do things, that would upset my parents. But I would say at GSW, my values were challenged a bit just because, like, I saw some of the things that were going on around me on campus, and I viewed them a certain way, and people engaging in those things, I was like, man, like, those are bad. Like, that's bad that they're doing that. Like, they don't understand how this is affecting the other people, how it makes them look. And, I had a buddy that actually sat me down, and he was like, we're not really much different than them. Like, what you're doing is still the same. It's just, it might not be on that same level, but, like, we're all doing things that are wrong in the sight of God, whether it's blatantly or whether it's just kind of you trying to hide it and think that nobody else knows it. But, like, God being all knowing, he knows these things. He knows our hearts. So, like, I had to come to the reality that, sin is sin regardless. And, like, I can't live my life saying I'm better than these people just because I'm not doing these things out in the open. Like, I still have my sin that I struggle with and that I try to conceal. So I think it would make a lot more real to me, if that makes sense. Like, just this understanding of it's not just about being good, but, like, it's actually about the relationship aspect. And I think for the longest time, I was just like, man, like, if I'm just good, like, if I'm not stealing, like, I'm not lying, cheating, doing other kind of things, like, I'm good, like, I can get into heaven. And so at GSW, it was like running into a brick wall, like, this is not going to get you into heaven. So
yeah. No, that's good. Well, I mean, it seems like all of us need to run into that, right? To try to figure out, okay, who we are, and be challenged by that, and then try to figure out, okay, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a Christian? What does that look like? I mean, what is the true story? Is it me doing good things, or is it the gospel where Jesus has done the righteous things for you, and you receive those as to yourself, and he takes those things that you're talking about. And so, I mean, there are moments where some of us are delivered from a lot of kind of sinful patterns, and then some of us are delivered from our self-righteousness, right? Yeah, like, you need to be saved from being good. That's crazy, right? But those things, obviously, on the outside, people enjoy those things. You're benefiting people, but you needed to deal with the inside too. So I think that's really, really important. And everyone needs to kind of walk through that and go, okay, what does it mean, to be who I am, and what are my values? What do I believe? And just to have someone do that, I think, is also important. A lot of times we don't find ourselves in pockets and environments where we are challenged, right? We just kind of find ourselves in a bubble, and if somebody starts kind of, whether it's on social media or whatever, kind of starts pushing back, we either go back into kind of what we're okay with, or we just kind of just ignore it. And so it's really, really good for you to receive that, well, let me ask you this. So you're getting out of GSW. You're recognizing, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna work for the city. Become a firefighter. Where's the picture of the story of you and Kara, right, and your kids?
Okay, so I actually met Kara at GSW. So I was involved in the BCM band. I helped lead worship. I played drums for him. And I remember I had a good friend named Mary Jo Moxley who actually sang in the band with us. Okay. And she was friends with Kara. And so we were all hanging out. Kara somehow ended up there. And we just had a good time talking, eating pizza, hanging out. And I remember her making a statement that, like, she liked when guys would kind of dress up, like look a little bit nicer. And so I remember that next week at BCM, I got a buddy of mine to join in with me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing. Like I'm gonna wear a nice shirt, but like I'm gonna also throw on a tie just to kind of see if like she'll notice it. And obviously it worked. We ended up dating, but I think just the timing. So she was a freshman. We started dating the spring of her freshman year, and we didn't really have a lot of time just to get to know each other. And she went back home for the summer with Lawrenceville, so like 3.5 hours away. I stayed here in Americus, obviously, and I had to work. I didn't have a reliable enough car that I thought I could drive to Lawrenceville every weekend or like every other weekend to see her. So that first summer, we went the whole summer without seeing each other. It was just kind of phone calls and texts. And she ended up having a hard summer. A lot of things happened that just kind of weighed on her and challenged her. And I tried to, be there for her as much as I could being here, but it was still not that same kind of interaction when you're face to face with somebody. And so that fall of the next year, she came back and we kind of took a step back. We were like, it's not working. Like I remember exactly everything that happened and that led to that. So we took a break, and then sometimes the timing is just not right for the situation, but it was weird. It was like awkward because we didn't really communicate after that, and I think neither one of us knew how to communicate with the other. So we would see each other, and it would just be like this awkward kind of silence. And I remember there was a BCN service, and she had actually got a camera that she had been working to save up for, because it was a really, really expensive camera. She worked at a photography studio during the summer, and she kind of found me, came and told me, that she got the camera that she had been working to get, and it kind of just re-sparked the things. And so we started talking again, and it got to that point where we had to have the conversation of like what are we doing? Like, are we moving forward? Are we just good friends? And so we ended up dating, and it's been history ever since then. So dated for a while. I remember we ended up getting engaged in Mexico Beach, and then I started working for the city in 2017. Actually, I started working December 13th, 2017. Okay. That's when I started my recruit school, and we ended up getting married March the 3rd of 2018. Okay. So coming up on 5 years pretty soon. We had a son named Briar who was born April 30th, 2019. That kind of changed our world.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But for the better, I enjoy it, man. It's the best thing, having kids. He ended up having, his first birthday was actually just the three of us on the porch, because that was like the height of COVID. So nobody could really come and celebrate with us. And but we enjoyed it. We had a great time. And then we actually have a 4-month-old daughter now named Ramsey, who was born May 30th of this year. So, which is a weird thing. So my birthday is July 30th, then Briar's is April 30th, and Ramsey is May 30th. So all these 30s. But that's us, man. Like,
that's awesome, man. I know, man. It's one of the most enjoyable things is to be a dad, to be a father, and to see the opportunities for you now to invest into your kids, just like your dad invested into you and the things that you've learned. So I think that's really, really amazing. So what's it like to be a firefighter in the city?
It's a good job. I enjoy it. I enjoy the that kind like the call to serve. I know I said that earlier, but like I think that's the biggest thing for me is like I want to make a difference, because when somebody calls 911, you know, they're quite possibly having the worst day of their life, and so they need people to come in and help them. And so I think that's what I enjoy most about it, is being able to help people in a time of need. I have learned a lot about myself. I have learned a lot about other people. Like I said, you kind of see people at their worst, and these people are looking to you to make the situation better for them. Yeah. And even if you can't, like, they're still seeking that from you. So you got to do the best of your ability. So, and it can be tough.
I know a couple of my friends are kind of first responders, and I just think about that. We talked about this a little bit earlier too, but just about the, I mean, you're walking into a situation, like you said, that could be the worst situation that person has ever been in. A lot of trauma. You're not the crew that gets there after. You're the crew that gets there to be a part of the first. It's the first responders, and so there's a lot that you have to process in your own heart and your mind. I'm very sure we're talking about challenges, and just trying to process so many things. What's that like for you to have to, like, how do you process those things?
I would say, like, I try and analyze things a lot. Maybe, like, I try analyzing the situation, but sometimes you don't have time to do that. So a lot of times I find myself analyzing on the back end. But I think as a department, we do a good job of kind of helping each other walk through these situations that we just been placed in. Because if you don't talk about it, it ends up becoming like a constant thing that you think about, and it'll weigh you down. You can feel like you're alone, which leads to the PTSD, which we see in first responders, and that's not normal. Like, a lot of times you're seeing stuff that is not normal. Like, that it was never meant to be that way, but like that's just the world we live in post Genesis 3. We're gonna situations are gonna arise and occur, but like I said, I think we do a great job of just trying to make sure, like, if you have feelings, or like you feel like something could have been done different, or if you feel like you didn't do enough, like we talk about it. And it can be tough, like even going home to my family, because like I want to talk to Kara about certain things, but like there's a disconnect in a way, because like we were there on the scene, like in it, like you said, and like just trying to portray that to her. A lot of times she doesn't really understand that dynamic of like what it was like in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that, I don't know how long you've been part of the department, or even just the idea of being a man and like trying to process your emotions, do you feel like just kind of growing up, was that something normal for you did you feel like you had space to process, to even seek counseling, and because I see the benefits of it, and sometimes I feel like the culture may be getting better at this now, but it's always like, well, if you're a man, you don't share your feelings, you just deal with it, you tuck it. Do you feel like you're in a good place now to be able to process that more, and it's more common than it used to be?
I would agree. I think I do a better job at sharing my emotions now. Growing up, not so much. Like, I held on to a lot, and that influenced how I thought about certain things, certain situations, even certain people. I know it shouldn't be like that, but I feel like that's what happens when, like, as a boy, you see these images of like what a strong man is supposed to look like, and I think it's quite the opposite of what we make it out to be. Like, if you can't control your emotions by letting them flow out to you in these safe spaces, talking to people about things, or like, kind of putting it all out there, I feel like you're doing yourself more harm than good, because at some point, it's all gonna come out, and it's gonna come out in like just some angry kind of rage type thing, or like if it doesn't come out, it might lead to depression, just anxiety about certain things, not wanting to end up in these situations because you're dwelling on it in your mind already. It's tough, I think me and my wife, we try and do a good job about just asking Brian like how he feels, like what happened, like if anything did happen, how did it make him feel, how did he respond to it. I think that's important to do, especially with young boys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's very important that we don't stigmatize that and say, that's not a good thing for young men to process. And so, if someone's listening even now and they're thinking about parenting, or they are parenting, and, they're thinking about, growing up their boys into men, just recognize, like you said, it's going to seep out somewhere, because it's so impactful to us in our lives. And so, being a man doesn't mean that you take what's given to you and you stuff it down. It means being able to process it in such a way. It doesn't mean that you're weak because you have to communicate that. In fact, to me, it shows a sign of strength, because you're able to communicate it in such a way that you're able to kind of spread that load out instead of just carrying it.
I think it's that idea of being strong enough to control your emotions rather than let them control you.
That's good. Makes sense. That's good. Well, I hope, even with, like I said, even if people are listening now and they've got young boys, just give them opportunity to be able to share, create environments for them, get them around men that are willing to say, hey, what are you going through? I think it's very, very encouraging for those guys to be able to do that. So tell me a little bit about kind of Americus. Let's kind of like take it and kind of push it forward kind of towards the future of Americus. Again, you're born and raised here. There's no inclination at this point where you feel like, okay, well, I'm going to another place. So what do you see about Americus? What does Americus need more of as far as the future is concerned, or what does it need less of to continue to be a thriving city, and maybe even from that, even people will come and want to hear more about Americus?
Okay, I feel like Americus could use more people that actually, care about the community overall, rather than just caring about the areas that they live in per se. I feel like we should do a better job of like actually getting out and getting outside of that bubble that we sometimes create and place ourselves in. Because you never know like what people are going through or what people are dealing with, and just because somebody lives on the other side of town, then does not mean that they're lesser. It does not mean that they're better. We're all humans, and I feel like the only way things are going to change is if we realize, okay, we need to come together. Like the division in Americas, whether we want to admit that or not, like we're divided, but the nation is divided as a whole right now. So I guess we could kind of expect that kind of trickling down. But I just feel like we need to do a better job of serving each other.
Have you been a part of any like organization or even just personal kind of effort to like what would it look like if we were doing it well?
I would say so. I've been in organizations that get out and serve these people, or not these people, but like serve different people across the spectrum. I remember going and working on a house one summer with some summer missionaries. We kind of did insulation for the people. I've been part of situations where like we build wheelchair ramps for people, but like even just going out and like trying to talk to people, not necessarily like about any given thing, but like just introducing yourself, like sparking or taking that first step and trying to get to know somebody. like I said, just because somebody does not look like you or they don't think like you does not mean that like they're not worthy of like your time. Like I feel like at the end of the day, we're really selfish, and my time is about me and what I want to do with it. But I think it's more so about serving others and, you know, giving of yourself, because that's the only way that we're gonna make America better. It's not by individually doing things. You can do all the things you want to individually and still not change anything. You just end up glorifying yourself. But I would like to see the community come together in that way. So
yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's, again, I just moved here 5-6 months ago, and just knowing that, like you said, you got to create environments and spaces in your life. You have to be intentional, right? You have to be intentional to create new relationships and to build new relationships with people that may not look like you, talk like you, act like you, right? Because of like I said, the assumptions is we know people. I mean, if you live this way, or if you vote this way, or if I see you in this car, I know everything about you. The reality is that we don't know anything about those people. And the more we talk, the more we actually find more in common with the things that we have. And the sense of compromise that we have to have in our relationship. Is the reason why I do this is because there's parts of me that I don't agree with all of that, but I'm doing it because of this, if that makes any sense. And so but you just got to get in there. You got to ask good questions. You just got to be available. And I think that's one of the reasons why, I mean, well, even what we're doing now is we're learning how to neighbor well together by just asking questions, getting the chance to know people. And so I think that's really, really huge. And I hope that there's more and more, because I think you're right. I mean, I think there are people that are Americus that, people love people that they know, but it's just hard to take that risk of what is this relationship going to do, right? And if we see every relationship as transactional or beneficial to us, then we're going to limit our scope. But if we just want to be more intentional and sacrificial, if we get nothing from this relationship other than a good conversation, it's worth it. It's worth it because people are getting to see that and model that. So I think that's really, really amazing. Well, let me ask you this, kind of as we kind of get ready to kind of land the plane. Let me ask you a little bit about, is there anything in particular that maybe you've seen in other like small towns and cities that you would love to see come to Americus as well, whether that's a new venue or whatever, that you just would love to see the city engage in a little bit more? You got kids, like, is there like, man, I would love for us to be able to do this in our town?
That question kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah.
It's probably one that I need to take some time to think on. I guess I could say this. I want to see like change within the school system. Like I feel like I lost my thought. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Well, I think it's something that even as we're just constantly just realizing, okay, why am I here? What am I doing? Where we're going? And I'm really thankful and I'm excited about some of the things that are happening in the city. So, for example, right over here on Jackson Street, it looks like there's a new restaurant. I think a ice cream shop coming in. There's going to be like a little art gallery on the top, and so there seems to be some things that are just growing. And it again, just as we engage, we're like, man, what are some things that get us really excited? Obviously, with anyone that would be coming to Americus, things like education are very important, right? I mean, those are kind of the top tier: education, jobs, those types of things. So as people are coming in as Americus, we just want to figure out how to serve them and kind of let them know that they're welcomed here, and that this is a great place for them to live and thrive. So, all right, well, let me ask you a couple, what I like to call kind of our rapid fire questions, just to kind of get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
So, all right. So you're a firefighter. So what's your maybe a daily or weekly routine? What time are you getting up in the morning?
Right now, it's a little bit earlier than I would like it to be, just because my son is going through this phase where like he just gets up and he is wired and he is ready to go. Typically, I'm getting up around like 5:35 there on the days that I have to work because I get ready. My wife actually makes the commute to Cordell, so on days that she is running a shift, I end up dropping my kids off, and so I have to do that before I have to be at work at 7. So typically, I'm up at 5:35 and trying to be out the door by 6:15.
Okay. Yeah.
Thankfully, my parents keep our kids so we don't have to pay for daycare, which is ridiculously expensive these days. But with my mom being a retired teacher and my dad being there, like, I'm comfortable with what my kids are learning. I know that Brian's going to be ready when he starts school, which will be next year, which,
that's awesome.
man, that
that's
time
crazy.
It has flown by. Like, it did not seem like he's getting ready to start school.
Yeah, but, favorite family activity?
Favorite family activity, probably disc golf.
Nice.
So my son loves to play, and he is at the age where he has his own bag, he carries his own disc. Actually pretty good.
That's awesome. For people that don't know what disc golf is, can you give me like, just kind of a 1 to 2 minute description of what disc golf is?
Yeah, so it's literally like golf, but you're using disc. And a lot of times people say frisbees. Don't say frisbees, it's a disc. There's a difference. A disc weighs more than a frisbee. And different discs are created in different ways. So like you might have a disc that's overstable, a disc that's neutral, a disc that's understable, which affects how they will fly. But it's literally like golf. You have a basket, you have a tee pad. You start on the tee, you throw, you have a certain amount of attempts that you have to get a disc into the basket with. So the scoring works the same way as golf. If you get it in under the amount of throws and you get a birdie, if you go over, it's a bogey, double bogey, triple bogey. But
there's a few disc golf courses here in Americus and the surrounding.
There's a disc golf course at the rec center out on Highway 19. There's a disc golf course at my church, which is Central Baptist. GSW has a couple of holes. Outside of town, Brickyard Resort has a disc golf course there. And I mean, you could go to Warner Robins, Albany. The course is everywhere. With disc golf, it actually
so really if you see a basket, it's more than likely it's a disc golf basket. And, so because they're popping up everywhere, which is great. It's a good little sport if you're looking for something just to get into that's new. And I play too, and it's just a great community of people. Everyone, if you see somebody with discs, you're probably like waving them down and going, hey, you want to play with us? So that's a good little community of people. What's your favorite restaurant?
Favorite restaurant would probably be, actually, so it's a local place. I actually do not know where it started.
Okay.
But I actually had it for the first time in Tallahassee last year. It's a place called Guthrie's.
Okay.
It's a chicken place.
Okay.
It's essentially just like Zaxby's, just like Raising Cane's, but to me, it's so much better. Like it's just one of those small town kind of vibes, but I recently found out that there's a Guthrie's in Albany.
That is very true. Yes, it is.
Once I found that out, it was over with. Like I won't drive to Albany just to get Guthrie's, but if we go
You're
down
looking
there,
for a reason to go.
Yeah,
okay.
I am.
That's awesome. All right, let me ask you this: what's your favorite song, or just what have you been on repeat or play throughout the week that you're really enjoying right now?
Well, right now, what we have had on repeat is the soundtrack to Encanto. That is all my son wants to listen to.
Okay.
As soon as we get in the truck or we get in my wife's car, he like, I want to listen to Encanto music. And you hear that enough, eventually you're going to put it on. But I don't think I have a favorite song. My musical taste, it's just so broad. Like I listen to literally everything.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, let me ask you this. So again, coming into Americus, being here, where are some really great places? We're talking about community. We're talking about neighboring well. Where are some good community environments for people to get connected to new relationships that you found?
I think the city is actually doing a great job of creating these environments, with like First Friday and with all the events that they're bringing into the city just to try and get people out there and get people involved. But I feel like people need to take those steps and be willing to actually go.
Yeah.
Like they had a music festival not too long ago, and I thought that it would have been great to go to. I actually was not able to make it at the time, but I know the people that didn't go because they were like, well, it was not my kind of music, or it was not my scene. But you're limiting yourself if you don't, take that chance or like take that opportunity. I think a lot of times we don't know what we don't like because we won't give it a chance.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But I think the city is doing a great job with that. I know Cafe Campesino is like a great spot to go and just sit down and meet people.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you wanted to invite somebody there to just have a good conversation, you can do that. It's a nice place. I actually remember me and my wife ended up going on part of our first date was actually to Cafe Campesino.
Okay.
I had plans to go somewhere else, but they were not open, and so I was like, okay, I need something else to get to real quick, and so they were open, and so we went there, hung out, got coffee. It's a lot of places.
Yeah, it's a good little place. I think they've officially changed it again changed it to this South Georgia Bakery. I think
Sweet Georgia.
Sweet Georgia Bakery. I apologize.
I actually used to work there. That was my first job.
Really? Yeah. So I've heard they've got really great food, and I've met some really cool people there. So there's some really great places. And like you said, you just got to be intentional, realize that people are going through a lot, and maybe they're just looking for someone to kind of, go through that with them. And so, well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit of your story. And just encouraging us, even as we, again, become better neighbors, we kind of step into that. What does that mean? It's great to hear the story and how God is obviously working in your life, but also where we're headed and how to focus on those things. So thank you so much, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right, man, we did it.
Sorry,
man, it's
about
great.
That one question
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, I didn't mean to throw you off or anything like that at all.